Hey everybody, Bonehead for the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to Star Player Spotlight, Count Luthor Von Drakenborg. So we're covering every star player available in Blood Bowl 2020, and the Vampire team is out, and the Vampire Spike is out, and the Vampire star players are out. So we're going to start off with the biggest and brightest star player in the Vampire lineup, Count Luthor Von Drakenborg. We're going to look at the stats, the skills, and the reason you really want to build a team around him. The Count is one of the most famous Blood Bowl players of all time. As far as the game has been, for as long as the game has been around, Count Luthor has just been insane. And if you look at the stat line, you're going to understand it. And in this edition, in the new Spike, he's got a price decrease as well. So Count Luthor can be used by Sylvanian Spotlight teams. So that's obviously vampires, but it also is Necro, Tomb Kings, and Undead as well. Now, what we are going to do is we're going to talk a little bit later on about why and where you'd want to take him in those teams. Because, well, I tell you what, you'll probably figure out before we even get there, because we're going to start looking at his stat line first. So 340,000, massive price, bigger than Griff, equal to Morg, pre-change, post-change, maybe, I don't know, expensive anyway. So movement 6, that's fine, right? That's not the best, it's not the worst, definitely average. That's it though. Everything else on this star player is beyond average. So this is a movement 6, strength 5 piece. So as the purveyor of rat ogres, movement 6 on a strength 5 piece is pretty good. But that guy's edge 4+. This guy is movement 6, strength 5, agility 2+, passing 3+, and armor 10+. We're not even getting to the skills yet. For a stat line, he has got the best stat line in Blood Bowl, potentially. Yeah, okay, movement 6 is a little bit slow, but edge 2+, strength 5 piece is the thing we've all dreamed of, right? Okay, so on top of that, when it comes to star players, you kind of think, yeah, well, they better have combat skills to keep them reliable and consistent. He's got block, hypnogaze, loner 4+, regeneration, and sidestep. So we've got a block, step, edge 2+ piece here. Now, immediately you're thinking, Pro Elf Blitzers. Everybody hates Pro Elf Blitzers, and they're only strength 3. This guy is strength 5, so he is going to be 2-die blocking almost everybody, almost all of the time, and you're going to have block there to keep him alive on defense and on offense. So the 2-die block with block is really not the worst thing in the world. He's got loner 4+, so you're going to have to balance that in, but we're talking 2-die block. And being strength 5, it's so much easier to be able to stack additional blocks here to get him to that 3-die block. 3-die block with block, it's automatic, right? No one rolls triple skulls. That's phenomenal. So mixed in with that, you've got sidestep. So when you when you come to strike the Count back, you're going to have to get a decent amount of strength to be able to actually 2-dice a strength 5 piece. And when you do, he's got block to keep him standing. And then you've got sidestep. Now, sidestep is a skill that combos beautifully with the next bit that we're going to talk about, which is the fact that he's got hypnogaze. So when it comes to vampires, their, I don't know, underrated skill is hypnogaze. They move up to a player and then they roll an agility test, -1 for all the other tackle zones except the target player. So this guy is on a 1-to-1 basis going to wander up to somebody and a 2+ switch off their tackle zone. So that's going to bring hypnogaze into play for your team if you do not have vampires already. If you do have vampires already, then what Count Luthor does is give you a strength 5 blocker who can wander into that cage. The whole point of hypnogaze is you turn off their skills, you turn off their tackle zones. So if you're going to be trying to take down a blodger, you can turn off their skills using hypnogaze and then power them as if they were a measly Skaven lineman. If not, Count Luthor can just wander into that cage and 2-die block the ball carrier. Now, that is kind of best case mentality, right? You're thinking, okay, I'm going to get a good shot on the ball carrier with him. Most of the time when it comes to Count Luthor, he's going to be kind of operating as your big guy blitzer, okay? So if you think about how you set up your team, you've got the front line. You're not going to be Count Luthor on the front line most of the time. If you're playing against a Skaven team or something like that, you may actually be able to try and farm out some blocks, especially if you're receiving. But on defense, Count Luthor is going to sit there and just be your strength 5 edge 2 plus linebacker. 6 squares that way, 6 squares that way is going to cover the majority of the field, and you're going to be able to bring that power, bring that consistency. Now, if you're running him in vampires, he's going to be adding to the pot. There's no nega trait on this player. You've got no bloodlust, you've got no bonehead, you've got no nothing. This guy just does stuff. This is a strength 5 griff, basically, which is just phenomenal. He's slower, sure, and he doesn't have dodge, but he's got strength 5, which is his own skill. Now, in addition to the fact that he's a strength 5 blocker, he does also have armor 10 plus and regeneration. So this guy does it all, and that's the most exciting thing about him. The price is massive at 340. Let's not worry about that right now, but you can't ignore the fact that the price is massive. But he's going to give you a strength 5 2-die blocking blith block defender with edge 2 plus to get him around there, and you've got the extra toolkit of sidestep and hypno gaze to just put him on the edge of something and force your opponent to act. And quite frankly, it's going to be a lot of work for them to even get a decent hit against that strength 5 block. And then he can sidestep into the cage, or he can hypno gaze somebody away and someone else can strike in. Count Luthor is going to be active in every sense and every turn of the game. If it's defense, he's going to be an issue. If it's offense, actually, if you're running a league and you're taking Count Luthor to give you that extra bunts, he's not a speedster. So even though he is a strength 5 edge 2 plus piece and very therefore capable of scoring lots of touchdowns, he's not going to like take all the gleam off your team. So the downside of running Hack Flem or Griff is that they score the touchdown. So if you're running league, actually the development of your team, it's stuffed. It's stuffed a little bit. It slows down. Luthor is more akin to be a really, really powerful assist piece, which is again another design we're seeing from Games Workshop that means that your players can still be the stars of the show. But because he is so potent, he can be really effective in a tournament build, and that we'll talk about the teams in a second. So he's got a special power which is star of the show. So once per game, if Luthor scores a touchdown, you get a reroll for the next drive. If you don't use it for the next drive, that reroll goes away. Now, it's going to happen. It's not necessarily going to happen every game. If he was moving 8, then yeah, I would be like, this is just absolute steroids. But it's not. It's reasonable. And actually, if you're going to try and score a touchdown with Luthor, it's not going to be automatic. But we can't ignore the fact that if he's got the ball, it is an incredibly difficult ball carrier to deal with. So actually, star of the show, you look at it and you're like, reroll every now and again. I would say more often than not, you are going to trigger that reroll. Whether you can use it quick enough because of the whole drive situation, you score on turn 7, you've got 1 turn to use the reroll. You score on turn 8. Scoring on turn 8 is a good one because the next drive is the next half, right? So actually, that's not a bad way of doing it. So Luthor can be a massive linebacker and can just be one of the biggest high edge rushers available. So he is offense and defense, and it is magnificent. So I've convinced you. You're thinking, ooh, actually Luthor sounds fun, could be useful in my league team, could be useful to build a tournament around him, a tournament roster around him. Where do I go for the model? Well, the Forge World model is fantastic. It is one of my favorite that they've released in a really long time. They've crushed it. They've got everything right about him. They've got his arrogance. They've got everything. They've even got his cool little Morpheus glasses, which I think is quite a nice addition. Now, if you don't want to go the route of Forge World, however, there's a ton of great models, including some of the older vampire models. Any cool vampire would make a really good Luthor. But I can wholeheartedly recommend the Brute Fun Vampire Star Player. Can't remember what he's actually supposed to be called, but yeah, Vampire Star Player, who is a brilliant Luthor. Now, Brutey, quality's always good. If you've got a 3D printer, you'll be able to pick this up. I think it's actually currently still this month's Patreon, but I'm sure it'll be available for STL purchase next week, or you can come to our website and pick him up as well for your team. But the Forge World model's great, and Punga, Grebo, everybody out there will have a great alternative, because the cool thing about Luthor is all you need is a unique looking vampire player. that's where it gets really fun about Blood Bowl style players, because if you've got a specific model that you really want to use, actually, that's good to go. But if you're short, if you're stuck, and if you want a good model to paint, Bruty's got you covered. Okay, so let's talk teams and why. So, he's a Sylvanian Spotlight player, which means he can be taken by Necromantic, Undead, Tomb Kings, or Vampires. Now, at 340k, he is expensive. So, let's start with the league benchmark. If you're running a league and you're down 340k, he is going to make a difference. He's going to give you an extra big guy. He's going to give you an extra blitzer. He's going to give you an extra scoring threat. And he's a tank. With strength 5, block, armor 10 plus, and regeneration. He's going to be around as well. So you can even use him as your third mummy in your undead team, or just as a big flesh golem in your necro team. The beautiful thing about him is if you are down 350k, he's going to be able to provide a ton of difference and a ton of defense, and he's an extra player for every turn. So first things first, if you are down 340k in a league match and you're running one of these teams, consider Luthor, because he is going to just keep you in the game. It's not a click and complete, okay? He's not a hack flame. He's not going to be like, I win the game. It's not going to happen like that. But what he's going to do is he's going to give you a way to win and an option, a really good option every turn. Whether it's a really effective 2-die blitz with block, whether it is a wander up, hypno gaze off the edge of the thing and allow your, I don't know, blimmin' heck, you could even wander in at that point with a Tomb Guardian. But I'm particularly thinking something along the lines of actually a werewolf being able to just zoom in there after you've hypno-gazed off the edge. It combos really well with every team on this list. But I want to talk about tournaments, because I've been brewing up tournament rosters for him, for these teams. Because actually, whether you're playing on the lower end at 1100 or standard 1150 or the bigger end of 1200, he is in very affordable star player. Now, the bigger end, obviously more affordable than others, but actually what he gives you, you can do it. It's going to cost you some stuff to fit him into a 1100 tournament. And I think it's appropriate that that's the case, because he has so much. At that price range, you are building a Luthor roster. You're not really taking Undead, you're not really taking Necro, you're building a Luthor roster with a couple of werewolves and a bunch of zombies. And that's actually phenomenally fun. There are some brilliant rosters out there, and he adds something to every single one of these teams that none of them have, except Vampires, obviously. And that is that Edge 2+ reliability is what you're getting with him. Necro, the best you got some Edge 3+. Undead, the best you've got some Edge 3+. Tomb Kings, you wish you had Edge 3+. So what he's going to add is a big guy to any of those rosters, and also a really effective ball carrier, especially in a tournament environment. So if you're going to be brewing up the roster around that, when it comes to a tournament, you're going to have a skill package. If you take him, you've got that inherent stat line, which is going to be your pick up the ball skill, which means you can then take all of your skill package and chuck it on the rest of your team. So in that effect, he's makes the rest of the roster even more effective. So instead of being like, well, I have to take a Shorehand Ghoul, you can still do it if you want, but you do have this guy. And actually, would a block Ghoul be better? Yes, it would. Or can I get another block werewolf? Yes, you can. And it's really effective. High cost, but actually what he's going to be able to allow you to kind of conjure up with the rosters, it's so exciting. Okay, so Luthor is here in the game. He is expensive and you will see him every now and again. But if you're taking a Sylvanian Spotlight team in League, there's going to be times where you can afford him. And when it comes around, you should definitely consider it. And if you have any Sylvanian Spotlight team painted up, you should consider a Luthor Von Drakenborg roster for basically every tournament you're going to. It may not be the most winningest, but it will definitely be a very fun and unique experience. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up. Let me know what you think of Luthor. He's just potentially top 5-star player. Ooh, might have to do a new top 5. Might have to resurrect that old list. Love a good top 5. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy blocking. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the channel even further, please like and subscribe. It really does help us out. Or come join us on YouTube members or in Patreon, where you can get exclusive access to some content, some loot, early access to basically everything we do, as well as regular competitions. Or you can pick up some Bonehead Podcast loot either on our website at boneheadpodcast.com. We've got the Dungeon Bowl things, we've got tokens and stuff like that, or on our Spreadshirt site as well. Everything you do just helps us make more content and hopefully do it of better quality. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Happy blocking.